Good morning, Bella Vista. It's time to talk about it. I'm very excited today because we have two very key people in our community that you need to know about. And they're going to show us how they work together and what they do. So, on my left, I'd like to introduce Selina Leigh.
Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
And you are the new ACC administrator, is that your title?
Yes.
All right, we're excited you're here.
I'm excited.
And then on my right is Taylor Robertson, and I see you a lot. You have a really tough job, and you are?
I am the city's planning department senior manager.
Right.
Or senior planner and planning manager.
And you work in the Department of Community Development?
Yes.
Is that?
Community Development Services, where the planning division is housed.
Gotcha. So, okay, so let's I'm going to have each of you say a little bit about yourself, but let's start there because there's a lot that happens in the city, and that particular department that you're in does a lot more than just the planning, or is it all encompassed in community development services?
So Community Development Services houses other divisions other than planning. Planning is just typically, the first level of items that normally need met before you move on to building. So the building division or building department is also within CDS. CDS also houses trails, and it also houses code enforcement. So those are the main divisions within CDS over on Lancashire.
But you're in the planning. But do you have a hand in any of those other things?
Planning's happy to help anyone and everyone. So sometimes we assist building, sometimes we assist code enforcement. Of course, always happy to assist trails. So, yeah, a little bit, kind of everywhere.
Gotcha. And Selina, you are part of what is well known now, educating Bella Vista, a part of the three-legged stool. Mm-hmm. You're that third leg.
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Yes.
And you, tell us, we're going to ask Taylor the same thing here in a minute, but tell us about you. Where'd you come from? Who are you?
So I actually started with the ACC a long time ago as a part-time position, and it was right before the building boom, and when the building boom hit, I became full-time, and I have worked every position for the ACC, just the office clerk to the administrative assistant and the administrator, and then there was a portion of the time I was on the board as well, and then did the chairperson position on the board. So yeah, I've done it all.
You're not a newbie. You've been around now.
Long time.
We keep saying ACC. Let's say, what does that mean? What is that?
So ACC, Architectural Control Committee, we enforce what's called the protective covenants that gives, as far as like aesthetic rules, what things are look like, location. We do get involved in location on your property with any kind of construction. But our compass is to try and make Bella Vista stay beautiful. So, yeah.
So Taylor, tell us about Taylor a little bit first.
Well, what about Taylor?
Well, how long have you been with the city, and where'd you come from, and your background? Because you're very good at what you do. I have to compliment you on that.
Thank you. A little bit of background. So I got my undergrad degree in political science, so focus on public policy and items like that, local government procedures, up in Joplin, Missouri, at Missouri Southern. And then I got my master's degree in public administration and public management, another focus on public policy and like local government, items like that, from Jonesboro and Arkansas State University. So I really like policy, things like that, procedure, items like that. I really didn't know planning was a thing until my undergrad. I was required to take an internship with the city planning and city manager's office at the city of Joplin. That kind of opened my eyes to this career, I guess you would say, and that's kind of what I decided to hone in on. I really enjoyed that internship, and so I decided to make that my goal, to excel in city planning. I found it really interesting, having a hand in development and change that you can actually see. You physically see structures and things like that, how the structure lays, best practices as to how to get it to be where it should, things like that I just found really interesting. And city planning is also really focused on public input, public interaction, public hearings, all of the things that you're familiar with as well, and I really like that too. I really like data, and I really like data from public input, so all of those items together is why I'm here, essentially. So I work for the City of Bella Vista. I've been here for 3 years. There was only 2 of us when I started, so I was just associate planner or planner. And then we grew and had some leadership change, so I'm now the senior planner, and now we have a planning technician, an assistant planner, a planner, and then there's me, the senior planner, and then I also house grading and erosion control, so I have a GEC reviewer as well in my division. So we've grown quite a bit since the last 3 years, 2 people to 4 or 5, so it's been exciting.
Yes. All right, let's just kind of do a little scenario. So Joe Brown decides he wants to paint his house. Now, I know that affects some of you and not all of you or whatever. So what does he need to do? Does he need a permit from both of you to do that? What happens? Who does he go to first?
So yes, painting, if it's just painting, it is just a permit from the ACC office. We have a simple application, and then we require for you to turn in the colors you're wanting to use, whether it's painting, brick, stone, and then we give a permit right there.
Okay. And so painting a house has nothing to do with what you do. Okay. So then let's work a different scenario. What would be a scenario where they would need to go to both of you? I kind of know this, but I want you to say it. And how you work together on that. Give us an example, like zoning, for instance.
Zoning is typically the city. The city zoning map is handled by the city. The most atypical thing I can think of that we always say, please check with the ACC as well, is a house permit.
House permit.
If it's within the POA, then they need a building permit from the city and the ACC, so we try to coordinate that.
So new construction?
Yes.
Okay.
And then if it's when the POA, I believe commercial development too, they also get permits from you guys. But yeah, that's probably the easiest example to give.
Okay. So septic, things like that. I mean, a new construction, it's not just the constructions, it's everything about that lot?
If you're developing it, the city, yeah, from our standpoint, we look at the placement, the size, the bulk, the coverage, from a planning perspective, access management, where the driveway is going, and then if it doesn't have access to sewer, we also ensure that it has an ADH permit, saying that the house is perked for what it's supposed to. So yeah, clearing and grading. The city also looks at that. I'm not. Feel free to jump into on whenever you guys.
Yeah, you pretty much start with the city as far as grading. There are a couple of things that require you to start with us, just because we're the go-between on some things. But our application, you pretty much submit the same thing as what you would with the city. But we're checking for what it looks like, the design of it. We do have to verify some locations. We do verify if it has water, sewer, electric. We are required to do that portion. And then, yeah, we kind of double check on our end. Like, good example, I had one yesterday where the culvert was going down the middle of the driveway. And I was like, I'm not sure that's okay with the city. So I might have some replies as we need to know that the city's going to sign off on something like that. So yeah, and we kind of vice versa that. If they see something, they'll call us, or they'll tell the owner, you need to make sure that the ACC is okay with that kind of thing.
So aesthetics and
Building safety.
Code.
All of that.
International building code and the local municipal development code. But a lot of ours is building safety and planning and zoning.
Yes.
No aesthetics at all.
Yes.
For single family homes.
Yes. Okay. So tell me about a typical day in your office. That you want to talk about.
Yeah. So yeah, I get there, and pretty much before I can set my stuff down, and staff has questions about things. The phones are ringing with multiple questions. Questions when the phone rings, a lot of times may not be our department per se, so we do have to redirect people. Applications come in all day long. I have staff that can review their over the counter is what we call them, or there might be a review where I need to look at it's more in-depth process. So yeah, and then just the day-to-day operations of managing an office. So yeah.
So developers come in, homeowners, who comes in? Who?
Oh,
Comes in?
we have everybody, yes. Homeowners, future homeowners, contractors, developers, yes. We see just about it all.
Do you both have inspectors? Is that a part of everything? So tell me about inspectors from your perspective.
Well, that's in the building department, not my division, but our building inspectors, after plan review, approves a permit, issues the permit, then that basically is handed down to the building inspectors, and they make sure that it's built as it was approved throughout the whole process when inspecting it, framing, throughout the whole process, basically. We have 3 inspectors and then a chief building official who also acts as inspector when needed, and they each have their own quadrant of the city. But essentially, other than that, they enforce the Municipal Development Code and the International Residential Code and Building Code along the way, as it's after the building permit's been issued all the way to the certificate of occupancy.
Gotcha. And what do your inspectors do?
So we have one inspector, as well as me. So we do, when you get a permit, you have a final inspection. It's scheduled 6 months out, and we just verify that you have done what you've applied for. And then any complaints on things, we will go out and inspect that. We may inspect the property. I may have to go out and look at a property before a home is built. And then our board of directors, they will also look at properties as far as the applications that are coming to them.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. I guess I'm trying not to ask things that I shouldn't ask. Wait, how many? Do you have enough inspectors? I guess a lot of times people are saying, look, he got in trouble, but this guy didn't. So talk to us about that. Is that going to get something you're going to fix?
Right now, we have one inspector for the entire city of Bella Vista, village portion, and that's not enough. I am hopefully within 6 months, I will be able to get another full-time inspector. But in all honesty, when you're doing for code violations and covenant violations, 2 inspectors still isn't enough. We have a large area, so yes, when we get a complaint, we go out and look at it, and as we're out and about, we will find things, but we don't have the capabilities just to drive around and find things.
And you really wouldn't want to do that anyway.
No.
You're not the police.
No, yeah.
That kind of thing.
So.
I just heard you say a key word, covenant. Code. So that's kind of the difference. It feels the same, but you're looking with different set of glasses, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. All right, Taylor. We just did, and we just started this short-term rental thing. Tell us how, from your perspective, and by the way, I don't know if you did it or not, but there's a beautiful little write-up on when you go to the city, and it talks about that. But how's that going to affect you?
Well, first, just want to give a shout out. Our communications director put that nice info sheet together.
Cassie?
Yeah, we helped. Her and I worked together to get that, but she made it, so she did a great job on getting that out there, as well as making the website for short-term rental information as well, especially in a timely manner. She did great. So, how it affects planning. From a planning perspective, short-term rental, we've accepted it with the recommendation of the Planning Commission and approved by the City Council in our table of uses. So now we can recognize it as a land use. And then with that came the ordinance that has the actual regulations. So from a planning perspective, land use-wise, you know that they're going to be allowed by right within the residential and commercial zones. And then, of course, a conditional use permit will be required for P1 and A1 zones. So they'll have to come to the Planning Commission before they can get an STR permit for those 2 zones. So planning will handle the review process, or the review part. So whenever someone turns in the STR application, it will go to planning for review. And then when the required safety inspection will be done by our building department. And then really that's essentially it. We'll make sure that all the requirements are there, that they're turned in. we're still working on the enforcement aspect, and we're preparing to get all the information of like what the septic inspection will look like, what the insurance may look like, all those questions that are bopping around right now. We're trying to fine tune that and get it ready for February 1st is the goal, to get all the information on that webpage that's already existing. But yeah, essentially planning will just do the actual plan review part, just making sure that everything's there for the application, and then they'll schedule an inspection with the building department.
You know, one of the things that's difficult for folks, I think even some of the people that come to the Planning Commission meetings, the job of the planning commissioners, and you, is not to question what might be put on that property in that zone, but that it falls within the parameters of the ordinances and things like that. For example, say somebody is zoning for something commercial. It's really not our business, but also not our place to make decisions on those based on what might go there.
So with your standard rezone, steering away from the STR,
Yes.
Rezones, yeah, essentially what will happen is that staff will prepare a report based off multiple things. So,
Yes.
And a recommendation based off of, it could be the existing zoning map, it could be the future land use plan within the comprehensive plan, the entire comprehensive plan. It could be the master street plan, and then make a recommendation based off of all that things and how it would fit in or serve the community around it, that zone. But yeah, essentially, you don't, with a rezone application, unlike a PZD, planned zoning district, you're only looking at the items or the allowed uses within the entire zone, not just one thing, and then applying all those uses within the existing plans and master plans and comprehensive plans that we have already adopted.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. I did steer off of that a little bit, but it's something that comes up all the time, and it's very difficult for people to understand in the audience. Well, I don't want a Dollar General there. Well, as long as it fits the ordinances and it's passed all the inspections and the zoning requirements, et cetera, it's not our call to determine. It's not the public's call as to what can go in there. Correct?
If it's by right. So if the zone is already there, like if a large scale came through and it was already zoned commercial, and it met all the ordinances and all of that, yes.
Right.
But a rezone, you're looking at all the uses that could happen within that table of uses.
Yes. We're going to get back to that in a second.
Okay.
But right now, do you have anything to do with short-term rentals?
Yes and no. There is a covenant that restricts property owners within our jurisdiction that you cannot rent out a portion of your property or a guest house or an in-law quarters separate when you live there. If you rent the whole, then that is compliant. So the short-term rentals kind of contradicts that covenant, but it's one of those that we're not going out and looking for that violation. If we get a complaint, then we are going to review the complaint and see if we, need to have them fix it, pursue it, that kind of thing.
So did I hear you say that if somebody has a portion of their house that's not in their bedroom right there, but also another part, that's...
Yeah, so they may have a two-story home and they rent out the basement and the access is to the back, or they have a detached garage with an apartment up top. They can't rent that out, but they can rent their home. They can rent their home with the garage, or detached, but they can't rent just a portion.
That's an interesting concept. I bet you're going to have some issues with that later, perhaps.
Probably. We're ready for it, but again, we're not going to go out and pursue trying to find these. We're for having Airbnbs and VRBOs. I think it's very beneficial for our city, and so we're not going to try and hinder that.
Gotcha. Okay. But, okay, so that's where you fit in. It's mostly the city.
Yes.
And working out all of that. What advice could you give, Taylor? Well, both of you really, but let's start with you. What advice could you give to somebody that, when somebody comes in new, do you kind of give them a walkthrough of what's going to happen and all of that? What advice do you give new people when they come in?
So new developers, new contractors, someone that's not developed here before. Yeah, typically that's a pretty standard, common communication I have is with new people asking how to develop a lot because it's typically in the planning stage. And so basically give them the rundown is, you want to make sure, well, one, is the lot within the POA, because if it is, you're going to be communicating with two bodies. You're going to need permits from the ACC and the city. So go ahead and start getting your information from the ACC. Typically, the city and the ACC has a building package with information. So that's normally my go-to is get both of those. And then next, explaining the sewer versus septic is always a big point I try to drive in with new developers here is that you're going to want to make sure, does it have access to village wastewater or any other sewers, wastewater system? If not, then your next step is going to be seeing if it perks for the home that you want. If it only perks for a 2-bedroom, that's always an important discussion to have, and you are dead set on having a 3 to 4 bedroom, that may affect your planning stage as to what you're trying to develop there. So typically those are my 2 very first points that I try to drive there. And most of the city's already zoned as R1 single family, and that's a lot of the inquiry that I get. So there's not really a lot of zoning discussion other than, yes, you can build a single family home there. It's within the POA. Just make sure you have both items, and then make sure that it has access to adequate utilities to make it livable, and that goes into the septic and sewer. And then if you have any further questions after that, feel free to reach out, but that's normally the first 2 biggest steps, is seeing what's needed for both, and if it has wastewater management. That's typically it.
I heard, and I think this is true because I think you told me this. When we did an interview in the beginning, we've been trying to train people on the 3-legged stool, that each of you on your counters has something that points to each other, like you need to go see. So
multiple things.
There's no surprises.
There
shouldn't be if they paid attention, right? Right. I understand that. Okay, so how about you? Somebody walks in, they're new, probably terrified.
Yeah. We try to figure out what the concept of what they're doing or wanting, like if it's a new home, if they're a new property owner, if they're a contractor, and then we direct them from that point as to, here's our rules and regulations that we have. You can also go here. And, we make sure that if it's a contractor that they understand that you may have one to deal with, just the city, or you may be working with both of us, as well as making sure they know that if they are part of the village portion, they work with both of us, where they can go. We try not to tell people what other organizations' rules are, but at least we're educated on our portion to direct them to the correct place. So, yeah, and then we just have conversation as to, we may go specific into some of our regulations instead of talking about all of them as to what their specific point is. So yeah.
What a lot of people don't understand, and it's even hard for me sometimes too, the POA and the city, they might at some point be the same, but the city boundaries are different than the POA boundaries. They are not the same. I think I'd pay $1 million for it if somebody would just do a map and do an overlay of like, this is city, this is not.
Yes.
Because that's so confusing to people. Do you all, either one of you, ever get calls that are not for either one of you and they have to do with the POA? Property Owners Association? Because that's the other part of the story. Like what?
Oh, where to pay your water bill, how do I pay my dues? They might have questions about lakes, and so, yeah, we direct them to the correct place.
Okay, and you too?
I would echo that. That's the same questions we get. Water fees, how much, if I improve my lot, what are the fees going to change to? And it's like, here's the phone number for the POA, they should be able to help you out. But same questions, same like lakes and items like that too.
Yeah.
So our job, all of us, is to help educate the people and keep facts, not fiction, out there in the workplace, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. What would you like to say, if you could get your druthers and there would be something that would help make not only their life interesting, but also make it easier for you? Well, not interesting, but help them get by. What would you be working on to help get closer to the goal? So when somebody comes in, I know. Well, example. When the city became a city, at the last minute, it was so rushed that a lot of things were not zoned properly, right? And I believe you've been leading an effort to help make those rules a little bit more user-friendly, correct? Procedures.
Procedures. I mean, yes, streamlining is always great. But when you're asking about the zoning, what specifically are you asking about?
Well, I'm really not. I'm just using that. I'm just saying I'm complimenting you because I know that you've been working hard to streamline things. So what would be that streamline? For instance, I forgot exactly what it is, but there used to be 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 points that people would have to go through. Okay, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, just another streamlining item. Whenever I first started here, we had 8 zoning variance criteria that need met for an item to be approved for zoning variance. So you had to prove basically 8 points of hardship that all had their own unique aspect in order to be granted a variance. And doing a cross-comparison analysis, that was the most review criteria in the area. And so we proposed to knock that down to 2 or 3, and 3 got approved or recommended approval by the Planning Commission, and that moved forward to the City Council. And so now, if you need a variance or you have a hardship on your lot that you cannot meet the zoning code, instead of 8, now you only have 3 requirements that need met.
Right.
But yeah, that was an item that we did for sure. Another item that we did to streamline is internal renovations used to be reviewed by planning for commercial development or non-residential single family, anything that wasn't a single family or duplex. So we had a lot of big box renovations that came through. It was a newly developed site, and they were just wanting to renovate the inside to meet the tenants' requirements that they needed to do daily operations. And so nothing was happening on the outside at all. Access management, parking design, movement of the building, nothing was happening structurally at all, just inside renovating. And so we brought a code change to that as well with the recommendation of the Planning Commission and the City Council to kind of remove that suggestion from code that we should be reviewing renovations. So that was approved. We no longer, planning doesn't get involved with just internal renovations.
Right.
So that streamlines that process quite a bit, takes out the 30-day planning review from administrative reviews. But yeah, I mean, honing in on the map, we're starting to look. We have been looking at the zoning map that that's been adopted. It was last adopted in 2018 to kind of see what all the existing uses are conflicting, trying to identify those, because if it is a conflicting use, then not only is that create an issue for the applicant, whether that be signs or altering or expanding or anything like that to a certain degree to reach zoning compliance. That's obviously staff review, and it makes the review time a lot longer. And so we've been identifying, working on those, seeing what all needs fixed. And I know you and the mayor kind of already talked about this today.
Right.
2023, Bella Vista, City of Bella Vista Planning will be working on a zoning code reform to kind of help, in addition to the map issues, the whole zoning code, errors that don't really speak to itself as well as it should, maybe conflicts itself, start cleaning that up to assist with streamlining as well.
Well, I appreciate everything you're doing. Now, we have about a minute left. Can you speed talk? No,
Yes.
I'm just kidding. No, seriously, I know you're working on a lot of things, and I think you're
Yes.
making the ACC a little more user-friendly, and I'm saying that with kindness.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm handed this organization that is in the ice age as far as technology and ways to work with the customers. So yes, I am working on trying to get us more up to date, electronic, things like that. It is going to take time, but yeah, and we will be ones that want to be more involved with the community and also other things like that. So yeah, I've been handed a very old building project here that I'm trying to bring up to date. So
Yeah. All right, well, I think we're probably out of time for today, but you know what? You've educated me, if nothing else, and we're hoping that we've educated some other folks. I look forward to working with both of you in future, and I encourage you in particular, if you ever want to come back and talk to us, say in 6 months, and we could do hey.
an update.
We got a new look.
Yeah.
So, But thank you both.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks
you
for
know,
having us.
You know I already like working with you. You're very good at what you do.
Thank you.
All right. So, and you are going to be joining us on the new member orientations.
Yes, I'm
I am
excited.
so excited about that. So we'll have representation for new people for all of that quarterly.
Yes.
All right. We need to go for today. This has been our version of this month of Let's Talk About It. Thank you both for being here, and let's continue to move forward, upward and onward. Next month.